So if you're involved in the nonprofit sector, you know the mission is everything,
right.
right? I mean, that's the whole point. But what happens when that mission stalls? What's preventing a really well-meaning organization from, achieving true sustainability? We're diving into a stack of source material today that gives us a pretty definitive answer, and it might be sitting right there at your leadership table.
It's the board.
Yeah.
And I think for too long, people have, they've viewed the nonprofit board of directors as just a required legal formality.
Or maybe an advisory committee at best.
Right, exactly. But our sources, they fundamentally reject that view. When we look at successful, long-lasting nonprofits, the board isn't just present. It's the engine of strategic governance and, importantly, accountability.
Okay, so our mission in this deep dive is to shortcut your learning curve on this. It's a huge topic. We're going to pull out the core insights that really prove why effective board management is probably the single biggest predictor of organizational health.
And sustainability, mission achievement, all of it.
Yeah, if the board is performing, the organization thrives. And if the board is dysfunctional, well, everything else eventually fails.
And because these insights are so actionable, we want to make sure you can take that next step, right away. If you're looking for educational videos and practical guides on working with your nonprofit board, especially around things like training or conflict resolution, you should go straight to Nonprofit.Courses.com. You'll find resources there that are specifically designed to help you implement these kinds of best practices.
Okay, let's establish the foundation here because it feels really high stakes. We know the board is the governing body. But what are the non-negotiable mandates they have to fulfill beyond just, showing up to a meeting once a month?
Well, the sources outline 3 really monumental responsibilities that define their governance role. First, they have to provide the overall strategic direction. And this means looking 5, maybe 10 years out.
Not just next quarter's budget.
Exactly. Second, there's that foundational fiduciary oversight, the ultimate financial and legal watchdog function. And third, they are responsible for what's called contributor support. So ensuring the resources and the policies are in place so the mission is actually achieved effectively, on the ground.
So it's not about doing the staff's job. It's about making sure the staff can do their job effectively and legally. I kind of like to frame good board management as providing the essential electrical framework for the whole operation. If that framework shorts out, the whole system just goes dark.
That analogy is perfect. It holds up. A well-run board really dedicates itself to defining that playing field. They identify the big organizational goals, and they write the necessary policies and procedures.
Things like whistleblower policies or conflict of interest forms.
Absolutely. They're not worried about the color of a marketing brochure. They're worried about the ethical framework that allows the organization to pursue its goals without taking on, massive risk.
Which brings us, I think, directly to Pillar 1, governance, accountability, and trust.
This framework you're describing, it feels like it has a dual purpose. It's not just operational guidance, it's also about building external confidence.
Precisely. This is where that framework immediately translates into credibility. Think of it like this. If you're a major donor or a grant-making foundation, you're looking for evidence. Evidence that your investment is safe and that it's going to be used efficiently. Strong, documented governance, transparent policies, regular self-assessments. Those are the signals that build that confidence.
So good governance isn't a cost center. It's actually a selling point for securing resources. I wonder, if a grant application gets rejected, how often can an organization trace that failure back to a governance problem? Far more often than they'd probably like to admit. Donors and auditors, they look specifically for documented accountability. And that includes how the board monitors its own performance. Governance requires constantly monitoring progress towards those strategic goals and, crucially, monitoring the effectiveness and composition of the board itself. Our source material really highlights the need for annual board self-assessments.
That's a fascinating detail because it creates this continuous culture of improvement, doesn't it?
Yeah.
If the board members are willing to critique their own performance, like how often they attend meetings or how engaged they are in committees, it just sets the tone for accountability for everyone else.
Exactly. When the governing body holds itself to that high standard, it minimizes complacency. If there is a conflict or, say, a financial irregularity, external stakeholders want to know that the board structure was robust enough to catch it, address it, and, prevent it from happening again. That resilience is what sustains trust.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little. How does that proactive, self-critical nature influence where the organization is headed? That seems to lead us straight into Pillar 2, strategic planning and vision.
This is where we see the immense value of board member diversity. And I don't just mean demographics, but in skills. You really need people with different professional backgrounds. A lawyer, a CPA, a community organizer.
A marketing expert.
A marketing expert, yes. Why? Because strategic planning requires challenging assumptions.
So it's not just about reviewing the plan that the staff puts together. It's about using those diverse perspectives to conduct a high-level stress test on it.
It is, 100%. If the strategic plan is only developed by internal staff, it risks what you might call organizational groupthink. The board's role is to collectively help identify overlooked opportunities, maybe a new funding stream or a demographic shift in the community, and at the same time, identify looming challenges that the staff might just be too close to see.
Can you give us a concrete example from the source material, how this diversity is actually leveraged?
Certainly. One example focuses on resource allocation. You have a passionate program manager who might want to dedicate, say, 80% of the budget to direct services, which is notable. But the board, leveraging their finance expert and maybe their long-term strategist, they step in to determine the most important uses of those resources. They might push back. They might say, look, we have to allocate 15% to capital reserves and infrastructure. Otherwise, that 80% for services, it vanishes in 2 years when the roof starts leaking.
So the board translates the organization's big aspirations into realistic, measurable, and sustainable goals. The strategic plan that comes out of that is effective not because it's aspirational, but because it's been rigorously refined by experts who get the practical constraints of finance and governance.
Exactly. They ensure the plan aligns the organization's passion with its practical capacity, and that makes the plan so much more likely to actually succeed.
That rigorous discussion about resources moves us seamlessly into Pillar 3, which is all about the money, financial health, and oversight. And this feels like the heart of that fiduciary duty we talked about earlier.
It is, and this is usually delegated to a board finance committee, but the full board, they maintain ultimate responsibility. Their core duties go way beyond just checking account balances. It involves approving the annual budget, yes, but also really understanding the financial performance metrics, monitoring investment strategies, and ensuring compliance with all the governmental and charitable accounting standards.
I think a lot of volunteer board members might see their financial role as simply, I need to notice if we're spending too much. But the sources are suggesting something much more complex here, especially around mitigating risk.
Absolutely. The board is required to be proactive, not reactive. The necessity here is, frankly, survival. It's ensuring the organization stays robustly financially healthy to avoid, catastrophic financial mismanagement, and just as importantly, poor efficiency. This is where we see some major pitfalls addressed in the source material, like relying too heavily on restricted funding.
That's a critical distinction. Restricted funds mean you have money, sure, but you can only spend it on very specific programs. It starves your administration, your core overhead.
Precisely. If a board fails to ensure there's adequate unrestricted capital and allows the organization to become what you'd call administrative poor, they are effectively starving the engine that drives the entire mission. That's mismanagement through negligence, and it directly jeopardizes everything: the programs, the staff, the long-term viability. The board's fiduciary duty is to ensure the organization has the liquidity and stability to function even when revenues, fluctuate.
So the board is tasked with insulating the organization from the inevitable volatility of the funding environment.
That's a great way to put it. They are the financial safety net. They're constantly reviewing financial statements against projections and taking corrective action long before a crisis actually hits. And this links right back to trust. If stakeholders see a financially messy organization, that trust erodes very, very quickly.
And this is where it gets really interesting, Flay. Connecting these formal roles we've just discussed to the daily lived experience of the team. That brings us to Pillar 4, organizational culture and fundraising. Let's start with how the conduct of just a few people on the board can influence everyone else.
The board's conduct is the organizational watermark. It just is. It influences the entire organizational culture and the style of conduct adopted by every single staff member and volunteer, whether they realize it or not.
It's the ultimate form of leading by example. If the board members are chronically late, if they're disorganized, or they engage in internal politicking, the staff inevitably sees that, and it becomes the acceptable standard of behavior.
That's exactly right. And conversely, when board members are truly committed to the cause, they're principled in their interactions, honest about challenges. When they show genuine respect for the staff, that integrity, it just trickles down. Staff members inherently want to emulate those positive attitudes.
And the outcome of that positive culture is highly practical, isn't it? It's not just about, good feelings.
It's survival. A positive, ethical culture dramatically enhances the ability of the nonprofit to recruit and retain good staff and, crucially, volunteers. People want to work for and alongside organizations where the leadership demonstrates commitment and clarity. It reduces turnover costs and increases institutional memory.
Okay, now let's tackle the external action here, the fundraising imperative. This is often the area where volunteer board members feel the most uncomfortable, but our source material confirms it's absolutely essential.
It's non-negotiable. The board must engage in the fundraising process. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean they're all writing huge checks themselves, though personal giving is vital for demonstrating commitment. It means leveraging their personal and their professional networks to secure those crucial donations, grants, and partnerships that are necessary to fund the organization's activities.
So the board is acting as the organization's ambassadors. They're the key connectors to high-level philanthropic resources.
Precisely. Their direct participation validates the mission for external stakeholders. When a potential major donor sees that the governing body is personally invested, and not just signing papers but actively opening doors, it secures funds and partnerships in a way that staff-only efforts simply cannot replicate. They are actively securing the resources that sustain the programs, not just advising on where the staff should go look for money.
So if we synthesize all four of these roles, governance, strategy, finance, and culture, we start to see the complete picture of what high-performance board management really is. But, as we kind of hinted at earlier, none of this happens by default.
And that's the critical takeaway. Strong board management synthesizes all these roles to help the nonprofit meet its mission and sustain the organization long term. But the reason education and management are so necessary is because the reality of volunteer leadership introduces tremendous friction points.
And the resources that are out there for nonprofit boards, they really tell the story of where things commonly break down. You mentioned role confusion for volunteers earlier. What does that actually look like in practice?
Role confusion is. It's rampant. It's when a volunteer board member, probably driven by a real desire to help, crosses that line from governance into operations. They start directing staff, demanding specific programmatic changes, or micromanaging the CEO. The sources highlight that robust orientation and clearly written policies are necessary to define exactly where the board's strategic oversight ends and the CEO's executive management begins.
That sounds like a major source of internal conflict, which is another common pain point the material hints at.
It is. We also see issues like motivating board members to fundraise. If a board member agrees to serve but is, perpetually reluctant to engage their networks, the organization suffers a massive resource loss. Management techniques like setting clear expectations, tracking engagement, providing tools are necessary to overcome that inertia.
And the conflicts that arise. Things like dealing with difficult conversations with your board chair or addressing the top sources of nonprofit board conflicts. That just shows that board dynamics aren't always harmonious, even among dedicated volunteers.
Absolutely not. The sources confirm that board management isn't just about policies, it's about applied interpersonal skills. Handling conflicts of interest, dealing with an underperforming board member, or addressing a chair who oversteps their authority. These are all management skills that have to be learned and applied. The governance framework is only effective if the leadership has the tools to hold the board to those standards.
This has been an incredibly insightful deep dive into, really, the operational heart of nonprofit success. To summarize, the board is not just an advisory or ceremonial group. It is the absolute operational engine that ensures external trust, sets long-term strategy, manages financial survival, and defines the internal culture.
And that engine requires constant tuning. If you see an organization that's struggling, that's failing to hit its fundraising targets, or experiencing consistent staff turnover, the sources suggest you need to look upstream.
I'll leave you with this provocative thought, just something for you to consider today. If an organization is repeatedly struggling or consistently failing to meet its mission goals, how much of that struggle can be traced directly back to the health, the training, or the engagement level of its governing body? The health of the organization really just mirrors the health of the board.
That's the reality. And if you recognize these challenges in your own organization and you need the practical tools to address them, whether it's creating a better onboarding process or figuring out how to have those difficult conversations, we strongly encourage you to visit nonprofitboardcourses.com.
That's where you will find educational videos and so much more on working effectively with your nonprofit board. Take that next step today toward ensuring your organization's long-term sustainability.
Thanks for diving in with us.
We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.